Hello, listener, and welcome to the Animation Industry Podcast. I'm your host, Harry Eibel, and I've run out of fun facts to say about myself. This chat is with co-founder and creative director at 6 Point Harness Studios, Greg Franklin. And in fact, 6 Point is coming up on its 20th anniversary, so happy anniversary to them. Now, through the years, Greg has worked on a ton of projects, including the Oscar-winning short film Hair Love, Guava Island, and Cosmos with Neil Degrasse Tyson. And most recently, and what we'll be chatting about, is how he came to direct the animation for Tig Notaro's latest stand-up comedy set called Drawn, which you can find on HBO. Now, Greg is also going to share how he originally became an animator back in the day by doing professional wrestling, what it was like founding a studio, and how he's been able to keep things going for the last 20 years. So now, without further ado, let's jump in. Hey, Greg.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm super pumped to chat about everything you've been working on. And we were just chatting about Frankenhooker, which is
Frankenhooker,
a poster on behind you. Can you give me like a 5-second, 2-sentence overview of what the movie's about and why I should watch it?
Well, Frankenhooker, it's directed by Frank Henenlotter, who also directed the genius Basket Case and Brain Damage. Low budget horror comedy. Frankenhooker is about a scientist whose bride dies on the wedding day in a tragic lawnmower accident. And so he puts her back together with the help and spare parts of hookers around the city of New York, and puts her back together. And of course, things don't quite go as planned. But as I mentioned before, Bill Murray said, if you only see one movie this year, it should be Frankenhooker, which is right on the poster.
I think I'm just going to go watch that right after this. I love that premise. What the heck?
Fantastic.
Okay, now serious chat. Animation.
Let's get serious now.
Yeah, well, you just finished up work on Tig Notaro's,
yes,
the whole hours and hours of stand-up comedy that you've completely animated. And I've seen a bunch of stuff from it. And you kind of did like a hodgepodge of like experimental animation. And it just looks like a super fun time. I don't know. Can you tell me a little bit about the project? And then I have a million questions about how it came to be.
Absolutely. Well, so yeah, I mean, it is the first of its kind animated hour-long special. There have been, as you've surely seen in the past, like little snippets of animated stand-up. A lot of them are kind of fan-made. They're as a great bit, and an animator will kind of illustrate it and put their own jokes in. This is the first kind of, it's the same idea but brought to an absurdly long length, a full hour-long animated special, which has never been done before. And I am incredibly proud to have been a part of it, because I made a lot of those little snippets in the past, and I think it's an incredibly fun thing to do as an animator, and they're fun to watch. And it's really fascinating to see the kind of interplay between stand-up comic and a cartoonist. It kind of is like my chocolate got in your peanut butter. No, my peanut butter got in your chocolate, kind of, make some two great tastes that go great together.
Nice. And yeah, because you have the stand-up jokes, but then you've got a whole bunch of animation jokes in there. And so, okay, why is this the first, immediately it reminded me of Midnight Gospel, where animating podcasts, people talking, why is this suddenly a thing? Do you think it's taking off? Because what's stopping me from just playing this in the background and doing something and not watching it on animation? Why did HBO, or why did you pitch it as an animated thing?
Well, I think that, Tig Notaro, obviously one of the top comedians right now, probably, in my opinion, is probably the funniest person alive. She wanted to do this, and she has all of her specials are innovative in some way. I don't know if you know too much about her story, but she's gone through a lot in her life, and she's manages to find ways to kind of reinvent her comedy constantly. And this is an idea that she wanted to do for a while, like a full animated special, and it just kind of came into fruition. And to kind of backtrack a little bit on your question, like why now? I mean, one kind of obvious reason, although, or I guess one obvious assumption might be that the pandemic is a way to do, you know, I mean, animation, all productions everywhere kind of got derailed except for animation. Animation kind of kept going, and people were able to work at home, and at least in the 2D world, were able to kind of work at home. And so this actually predates the pandemic, though, which is really interesting because she came to us. It was in October of 2019 when we first met with her about this, and she was aware of my my past animated clips, for stand up that I had done. I had done one with Kyle Kinane. I'd done with Wyatt Cenac. Jackie Cation was the one that she loved the most. And those are all up on YouTube if anybody wants to go spelunking into the depths of YouTube and find those. But she was aware, of who I was, and had actually contacted me a decade ago about doing one, which due to various reasons never, wasn't able to work out. But when we met with her, I was kind of wondering, like, is she going to remember me? Because now I have glasses and my beard is a lot longer and grayer and crazier. And I could tell she didn't really recognize me at first, but when I started talking about those things, she said, "Wait, what's your name again?" And I told her, and she had 5 people with her, and she was just like pounded the table. That's who I was talking to you guys about. So it's like, okay. Everybody on my side of the table just kind of shrank back, and she started saying, like, okay, so how would we do this bit? Blah blah blah. We just started working on it almost.
But you didn't even have to
immediately.
pitch it. Like there was no RFP.
Well, I did make a big pitch because it didn't have a network, so I did create a at the time we were
Okay, so
shopping it.
she literally came to you and said, "Look, I have this special that doesn't
Mhm.
exist in anybody's
Yeah,
hands right now. It's just
right.
film or audio or
Mhm.
whatever. Can you animate it?" And together you like came up with a package and
Mhm.
proposed it to networks.
That's exactly right. That's
Wow,
exactly
that's
right.
incredible.
So I kind of put all my stuff in a like a little web page that had all my work on it and sent it along, and it's like, well, what are we going to do for this? So I kind of felt like it was mine to lose, and I just kind of jumped in and made the presentation of my life, basically, and went through all the bits. I had kind of a very rough edit of the bits they wanted to do, and her and Thomas Olit, who had kind of edited something together. There were 48 hours worth of tapes. These were tapes that were made at Largo, which is a big comedy theater down here. And so there was 48 hours worth, and Thomas is a like kind of a genius because he listened to everything, and he created this spreadsheet where all of the bits were kind of cataloged and ranked in terms of strength, and he basically edited that
His own
together.
personal humor. Like he was like, I like this joke and I don't like this joke.
I mean, it's pretty objective, to be fair. Like the audience reaction,
Okay, okay.
tells you what if it succeeded or not. And a lot of it was very loose. Like this. These are the tapes. The tapes we were working with were the tapes that a comedian of Tig's stature would take and craft a hour-long special out of, and then perform it, somewhere. So you do like 2 or 3 tapings of it, and it's a whole production with multiple cameras and multiple microphones all around, like they mic the audience, and the clean channel of the stand-up's voice. We didn't have any of that. We were kind of approaching it almost more like a found footage, almost, because the audience that you hear laughing on the special is that's coming off of Tig's mic.
Hmm.
It's just a direct from the board, from this right off the soundboard recording. And so that's what we had. And so once we had that, I sat down with my editor, Tony Christopherson, and we did a deeper dive, and we had this amazing, you know Thomas Ulit made it, and we ended up calling the spreadsheet the Thomas Guide, which is a kind of Southern California joke for you, but old school. And so he, we would see that there were 5 times that a certain bit got done, and we would listen to all 5 and go like, that one time she said that one thing was funnier than in the one that's kind of like the hero, and so we would kind of put it all together. And then like our genius audio team at Esho Sound was able to kind of seamlessly make it work. I was really worried that it was going to be that the audio was going to be usable,
Wow.
but he is a genius and was able to kind of stitch it together seamlessly.
So you had already done a ton of development before you even started trying to get a network involved. Like you were like,
Yeah,
and like this is a
right.
project I'm going all in on. I'm assuming Tig, like, and you put in investment to like get the editing and all that stuff done in the development.
Well, not in the development part, because we had the we knew what bits were going to be in there roughly. There were some changes during production where like a certain bit would get removed and another bit would take its place, but like I had 90% of it, and so I kind of would sit there and think like what animation style, because we knew it was going to be all different styles for each bit, and so it's like what style goes with this bit, and why, and what is the reason. And so that was kind of my initial presentation, was talking about things like, she has this great bit of, where she talks about her friends not helping her when her wisdom teeth got removed, and it's a great story. Her girlfriend didn't drive her back, so she drove herself back from getting her wisdom teeth taken out, and it's hilarious, and it just keeps building. But it's like, so what do you put with that? And so I kind of took a step back and thought, like, thematically, this story is about kind of people that are attractive in your life, but they're not there for you. They're not thoughtful, they're not conscientious, and they're like the beautiful people. And it got me thinking about kind of the jet setter kind of illustrations from like the 60s, 70s that you see in magazines and things like Bob Peak and Robert McGinnis and all these great, master illustrators from that time. And I'm like, why don't we kind of do something like that? And I would explain it like that to Tig, and she would go like, "Oh, that looks great," And we just did that through the whole. Sometimes a bit would just be pure comedy. Like there's nothing. It's just funny, And we would go with like a kind of a comedic look, like something that, like the old bat, bit where she's staying with this old woman who's super annoying. We went with we started with kind of Looney Tunes, but then we kind of morphed it into something a little bit more modern and kind of iterated into like a cool look. And there was like a bit about her love of the late Eddie Van Halen, and we decided to go with kind of a 80s music video kind of look, and we just kind of went from there.
That sounds like so much fun.
It was so much fun. And I got to tell you, my favorite one was
please.
This bit that kind of got added later. Well, the only one that Tig and her team kind of had a premeditated thought about was this bit about Ringo Starr. And it was a very silly joke about Ringo Starr getting the opportunity to sing a song for the Beatles. And it was Yellow Submarine. And so that was kind of what the bit was about. And so the idea was to kind of, mimic a look that was similar to the movie, Yellow Submarine. But it became very apparent that we were not going to be able to clear any of that. Like it was just never going to be budgetarily possible. And it was pretty lean budget, to be fair. So we were like, well, what else? And this was going to be the grand finale. She wanted a big musical number to end the show with, and so I said, well, what do you have as a backup, if we can't clear Ringo? And she says, well, I have this Dolly Parton bit, and she talked about it, and the bit is amazing. If people haven't seen it, don't listen to the next minute. That I'm gonna because I'm spoiler alert right here, but the bit is about how she's listening to Dolly Parton on a road trip with her friends, and it's this very like lighthearted, kind of silly, downright song called Three Doors Down, Two Doors Down, sorry. That Three Doors Down is a band that's actually in the special. Two Doors Down. And she imagines this one part of the song comes up, and she imagines that the fun that they're having gets cut short by a horrific car accident. And I thought that was hilarious because it just veers into utterly over the top tragedy, right? And the car is like tumbling down a cliff, and they're dying at the bottom of the cliff, covered in blood, gurgling on their blood. And the song is on repeat, so it starts up again, right? So the juxtaposition of this joyous Dolly Parton song and everybody dying really struck me. And so she just told us this bit, and I was like, oh my god, that is so good. And she said, like, right on the spot, like what kind of style would go with that? And I'm like, I don't know, like Pixar maybe. Like I don't know, like Pixar is funny to me because they're definitely like cartoon characters, but they have like this human skin and like pores and real skin. Like it's kind of creepy, is like real skin involved, like sort of implies that they have like blood and organs and stuff that you don't think about in a normal cartoon.
Yeah.
And I just said, like, I just wonder what it would look like if Coco bled to death. What does that look like? And they all laughed, and then we went to go on to do our budget parody of Pixar, which we did the best we could. Like, hey, Pixar is a high standard, but I think we got up to Barbie movie level, so you still get a lot of great gory humor out of the grand finale of that.
Amazing. I love that you're
Spoiler.
also just reliving all of this just now.
It's very vivid.
You mentioned budget a number of times. Are you talking about like once you had a broadcaster on board like HBO and you figured out a budget for this, or this is still ahead of time?
I mean, budget was always that you asked earlier and I didn't answer it, why this hasn't existed. And I think that is the main reason why no one has done an hour-long stand-up special. It's just, animation's expensive, and everybody that is working on it has got to get paid. And there's a number of quite a number of hours, that need to go into the creation of this. So that's the reason why this has never really been done before, ultimately.
Yeah.
But I think that, like, as I said before, this is an idea that Tig has had, and I think she's talked to other studios about it. And she asked them, like, okay, so how long would it take to do this? And they put on their feature film cap and say, like, oh, this is great, we could totally do this for 15 million. And it's just like, yo, no, we can't get that kind of money for this. So yeah, we did it for a literal fraction of that.
Yeah.
And had to do it smart, had to do it, quick and dirty. If you look at it, in a way, it's like producing, 14 or 15 animated shorts all at once. That's kind of how that's really what it is. So kind of going in that some of these bits are going to need to be a lot of high production value, over the top, um, overwhelmingly good, and that other ones you can get away with doing like simple black and white, limited background, type of things. That going in, but of course I had to like put everything into everything. So I'm happy to report we did not lose money, but it's and it was a success, but it was a lot of work and a lot of thinking that went into this.
Well, congratulations. How big was the team
Thank
that
you.
ended up working on this?
Huge. I mean, we did outsource a few of the bits to other studios, and we had the one thing that's kind of nice about the pandemic. The nice thing about the pandemic is it really erases a lot of the whole kind of local kind of prejudice that you might have. Like, oh, they got to be in town or can't work on this. Now it's no different for me to work with somebody in Spain or India or Nepal. We had a great group in Nepal that did work. Wow. And working with somebody that's in Silver Lake, like there's no difference practically, except for time zone stuff, which is, we had a great group in Mexico City. We had a group in Australia. Oh man.
How do you find these guys? Like, you just call up, you go through the phone listing in Nepal? Like,
they have to be in Nepal. No.
So you're like, okay, we need to outsource some of this animation because we don't have bandwidth or budget or something.
We've been around for 20 years. We have a Rolodex, and
so the answer is we've been around.
we know people.
So tell me then, how do you originally get a contact of somebody who has a studio in Nepal or Australia or Mexico? Like, you have a project.
The Nepal studio, we knew them already, so we had worked with them on a previous
That's not an answer. I knew them already.
I suppose so. Your recommendations, even though a lot of these studios in town are technically our competitors, that doesn't mean that we don't know each other and respect each other and trade, good tips, when we get one. And I believe that we had heard about the Nepal team from Chris Panosky, who runs Titmouse, and who we go way back with, and that's a whole nother story. But there wouldn't be a 6-point harness if it wasn't for Titmouse. They were performing at the same time as we were, and we ended up doing some work for them that they had outsourced to myself and Brendan before there was a 6-point, and we were able to use that money to kind of create our own studio. So, we're very close with them, and they had told us about this team in Nepal, and that's how. And so we worked with them. They do CG work, and so we had a project that had some space battles in it, and these ornate spaceships were flying around, and they did all those sequences, and they are brilliant. And yeah, so that's nice. That's the story with them. The Australian studio is run by Ivan Dixon, who's a complete genius. He used to run a studio called Rubber House, and then that transformed into Studio Show Off. And so I just DM'd him, just said, hey, would you like to do something on this? And he's like, absolutely. So
yeah, nice. Wow. I have some more questions. You mentioned, Titmouse helped you get your start, and I definitely want to chat about how you started the studio, because you also said, you're almost 20 years anniversary. But I still have a couple questions just about the special. So you know,
Hmm.
you have this package together, and
Hmm.
you've got like, okay, we've got an hour special. It's going to be animated. You have this pitch little thing together. Do you just start calling up all your contacts at all the networks and like, hey guys, we got
I
this new
mean,
pitch thing going on. You know, you're going to want it because like, you know, Tig
basic
is
basically,
yeah.
a lot of that work was done with, as far as the contacting networks and stuff. Ellen DeGeneres' company, is a producer on this as well, so
Hmm.
they're attached, and their connections are better than ours when it comes to selling, selling stuff, shows like that. Her name carries a little more weight than ours, but so yeah, a lot of that stuff was kind of set up through, Ellen's
Gotcha.
company, and Tig Notaro's stuff, and we really just pitched, a couple of places, and it was kind of funny because it was pre-pandemic. So when we pitched HBO, we all had to, haul our asses down to Santa Monica, where the HBO offices are, and we went into a conference room, and there was nobody there, but the executives from New York were up on the screen.
Oh my goodness. So you could have just stayed
So,
home before
but
anybody knew what
nobody,
Zoom was.
before anybody knew what Zoom was exactly. So, but yeah, we almost sold that in the room. Like it
Wow.
was just like, HBO.
They got it. They're just like, we
They're
love
they're
this.
they're the they're the best when it comes to comedy.
Yeah.
So, or when it comes to TV, practically in general, like their stuff is just, top notch for
And what was the
forever.
timeline like between 2019 to 2021? Is it just the 2 years in between with them saying yes to coming out?
Well, so meet Tig in October 2019. We worked, on the pitch. It was kind of, part time. Working on the pitch until I think we pitched HBO in, I'm going to say mid February, and they, greenlit it, just like a day or two before the pandemic
Oh,
lockdown, right?
okay.
So, uh, so that's March, whatever, 14th or something. And then there was like like a few months of, all the deals and all that stuff that takes forever. So the whole time I was just sitting at home listening to 48 hours worth of stand-up comedy and not working on the show,
Yeah.
really, other than thinking about it. And we I think we started off in like, I want to say like July, 2020. That's when we started to get going, and we slowly ramped up and worked our asses off, and we delivered it in July
Yeah. Wow.
2021.
So there's a
So
big gap between you initially getting this project and it actually you starting to work on it,
a
I
few
guess.
months, a few
Yeah.
months. Yeah,
So
because they got to do all the deals and stuff.
yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah. So are
you know,
you uh like how does that work with the studio? Do you just like kind of like scale down and scale up as needed with projects like this, or do you have a whole bunch of just consistent work that is always getting
we
done
have,
and then
yeah, we have consistent work that is always keeping the lights on at the studio.
yeah.
Like I even now it's like, we have so much stuff that is going on. I want to say there's like 6 or 7 projects going on right now, that are all in different stages of everything. So
Nice.
yeah, there's a lot. So it's just, our production team is incredible, and they're able to kind of maneuver all of this stuff. I don't know how they do it, but it is pretty incredible.
Nice. So take me back to the start
Mhm.
of 6 Points, way back in the day, Titmouse, all that,
Well,
or maybe even take me back to you. Like you got into this
well,
from wrestling or something. You said like
it
why
is
animation out of all the
a
careers you could have
funny.
chosen?
Well, it's obvious. I love animation. As a kid, I I always drew. I love it. But I think, around sometime in high school, I just realized that I was never going to have a career in animation. I just wasn't good enough, and it was too hard, and I needed to figure out something else. So I kind of had a few, like crazy ass years where I did various things. One of the things was working for about 7 years in a comedy wrestling promotion in San Francisco. And I learned a lot, like I
7 years, that's not a short amount of time.
well, yeah, it wasn't full time, it was like it was a good run of like monthly shows in the San Francisco Bay Area. We did a couple we did a few tours, I got to go all over the country, got to travel Europe. We were part of various things like the Warp Tour and things like that. And it was a lot of fun. But it was like just kind of one of those things where you start to understand how stuff is put together. And I think that's what I really took from it, because um, my best friend was like the announcer and kind of, I guess, head writer, of the show. And so we would always work on stuff, and I would kind of, pitch ideas, and we would kind of put together this show every month. And I just learned a lot about like how stuff works and how stuff is put together, and it was very much like a trial by fire thing.
Wow.
About the same time, I was working like myriad, crappy jobs and things, and I started doing illustrations for AOL. This is way back in the day, right? And that was like my first art job, though, and I was like doing spot illustrations for AOL, and it was at a firm, like a design firm. So other jobs came after that, and people were animating in this program called Flash. And I was like, like, what is going on? Like, this is animation on a computer. It was
Yeah.
unheard of, as far as like on my level, like, of course they were, Pixar and things, but, this is like, how the hell is this happening? So, and it was kind of during the dot-com boom. So people were spending money on everything right and left. And it was the kind of environment that's like, oh, do you want to do that? And I'm like, hell yeah, I want to do that. So they would send me to like Macromedia conference, and things like that, and I would learn how to make an animation. And my art director was like a traditional guy, you know, and he had worked on the Hulk Hogan rock and wrestling show in the 80s, like Saturday morning cartoon, where it's like all this wrestling synergy. So he did things in a very traditional way, like almost traditional animation, which in computers in those days was like really, really limited. And I don't know, something just kind of clicked to me where I was like, we have all these layers. If I put the head on one layer and put the arm on the other layer, I can move them, and it's not as taxing. I don't have to do a whole drawing, And this was met with a lot of skepticism, but I was kind of like, let's do this. And
You're telling me you
you know,
invented rigged puppets?
it I didn't invent it, but it did occur to me.
Yeah.
It did occur to me because I'm not that good as an artist. I can't draw like you know as well as my peers. So it was a cheat code kind of in my brain, and so I just thought like, oh well, let's do this. And the first thing I animated was Mickey Mouse, and it was a remember back in the day, every website had like an intro. We used to call them skip intro because
Yes, yes.
you would just be like, take me to the website, please. I don't need this kind of
With
fanfare.
sound and like
I don't need a cut scene. I know, it's like you're just on your computer and all of a sudden you just get blasted with music and sound effects, and it's just like was a horrible thing. But
welcome.
Walt Disney World 2000 was this big thing, and our firm created this very absurd cut scene, of a little boy in his pajamas who looks out of his window and sees a magical star, and it creates this pixie dust that forms a Mickey Mouse in his bedroom, and they hug. And that was the first thing I ever animated in my life.
Wow. Wow. For Disney. Amazing.
I know. Here I'm sitting there saying like I'll never work for Disney, and here I am
animating their website intro, which millions of people saw.
Their iconic character. You know, it was
like,
so
ridiculous. Get us Greg.
Oh my God, I know. Well, you know, it was the first thing ever animated.
Wow.
And yeah, it was so absurd. And you know, the .com boom kind of burst. I ended up moving to LA and working for this video game network called G4, which was like a cable network for video games, and I was the art director for a while. And then, you know, that kind of imploded for a long time. It eventually got back on the air, but when I was there, I was like one of like 4 employees at G4. But I was in LA. I had like a newborn baby. It's like a, you know, new wife, and like new 0 people, you know. And so I kind of, you know, struggled for a while there, but I ended up getting a job on this Flash animated movie based on and it's the worst. This is the worst. Let me just preface. This is the worst. It's called Jake's Booty Call, and I worked on it for a year. And unlike any project that I've ever worked on, this project had no budget consideration whatsoever.
There's a Wikipedia page on this.
Please don't. It's awful. But the thing about it was like, when we started that movie, that movie had been in production for a few years. When I came on it, it was supposed to be a 2-month job. And that job ended up being like over a year, right? And every 2 months I would say like, hey, what's up? And it's like, we're clearly not done with the movie yet. And there were like 2 more months. And that just kept happening, you know, throughout the entire thing. And when I started, there was no storyboards. There were no script. The script, there was a script, but it was like the size of a phone book. And it was just this completely absurd, offensive, awful, you know, thing. But, you know, I had a baby, you know, I had to feed my kid. And
little does your baby know that you're creating this.
Oh my God. And the important thing is there was no pipeline, you know. So like people were just working on scenes that they knew were going to be in the movie without any overview, you know. There was no director, you know, really. And I'm going to write a book about this whole experience one day. So maybe when I'm finished with my book, you can have me back and I'll tell you all about the craziness of that production. But the important thing about it is that's where I met Brendan Birch, Saharat Tantivaranyu, Dave Vamos, Nick Lakiotis, all these people that we went on to form 6 Point. And it was because we had created a pipeline. Wow. You know, and Brendan was really the visionary on that, where it's like, we need to like come up with a system to finish all these shots, because as it was, people were just kind of noodling around with things, and there was no deadline, you know. It was just going on forever, and we all knew that we would lose our minds. And it was really funny because we got pretty far with the movie, and then we had to stop because the lease was out on the building. Otherwise, I might still be working on it.
Still be working on it 20 years later.
I might be, because it was just insane. So
good thing the lease was up.
Good thing the lease was up.
I Googled it, and it's got a Facebook page with 37 fans, Jake's Booty Call. And it says Jake's Booty Call is a ridiculously fun series of multi-plot Flash animation games where the goal is to get Jake laid.
Yes. So that was the series. I didn't work on that. I worked
on there's a whole franchise. This is a universe. Jake's got a universe. Yeah. You could still be working on this.
I could still be working on it. But regardless of all of that, the important thing was we kind of had a system. We kind of had a system, and we were like, we've got something here where we can make animation for broadcast on our computers.
Yeah.
It was a wild time, man, back then. Like there wasn't just this Jake's Booty Call movie. There was another movie that was being made by Sony that was based on another shitty web cartoon called Little Pimp. And Little Pimp was the rival production.
Oh
And
my
both
goodness.
everybody was like, and to this day, I'm the only person to end up working on both
Wow.
things. So when I finally worked at Little Pimp, all of everybody that was left came up to me and said, "What was it like over there? Oh my God, we heard all these stories." And I'm like, "Well, okay, I mean, I'll tell you mine. You tell me yours, because we had our story. We heard stories about this one, and it was that theirs was different because they actually had like a big studio behind it, and nobody knew that this stuff wasn't going to fly, at the time, because we knew that the movie was garbage. Like we knew it was complete, like it had no story. It was just one offensive thing after the next. But you have this thing in your head that is like, this our society might be low enough that this becomes a huge thing, right?
Oh my goodness. I just read the plot of Little Pimp on their Wikipedia. It's even
Oh
worse.
God,
Like a
it's even
9-year-old
worse.
boy befriends the pimp fruit juice who gives him a small amount of pimp glitter, and then he
Bernie
decides
Mac was in that.
like I don't even know what I'm reading.
I know. It's like there was a whole that was an era of Hollywood that I'm gonna write a book about. But anyway, um, so we created our company. Brendan put all the paperwork in, and we didn't have a name. And within hours of us getting that paperwork together, we got a job, and it was the opening titles to the film Eurotrip.
Oh my gosh,
Um,
you're just going from one one of these, from Jake's Booty Call to Little Pimp to
to
Euro Trip.
Eurotrip. I know, right? Well, hey, so in a world where Eurotrip is a big movie that comes out, why not Jake's Booty Call?
Yeah, yeah, why not?
So, you know, flash forward to 18, 19 years later, we've we've won an Oscar for Hair Love. We've put out this, really come full circle with the whole animated stand-up thing with Tig, and it's we're it's amazing. We have so many more things in the works. It's crazy. It's been quite a journey.
Yeah.
Um, and hey, listen, you can be like me. You could be like a loser who can't draw, to being an animation veteran if you just play your cards right.
Some, somehow get AOL to send you to that
Yeah.
Macromedia conference where you invent rigged puppets, and then
I'm not claiming to invent rigged puppets, but it did occur to me.
yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, like, are there any crazy stories from the last 19 years of you, picking up
Oh,
clients
man.
and building the studio? And is there anything that stands out as like specifically interesting to highlight? Or specific
I
lessons
mean,
you've learned? Like, I guess overall I'm interested in what you like. You're one of the founding members of a studio that's been around for 20 years.
yeah.
What is your ultimate goal that you're trying to go with? Is it just, keep doing cool projects, keep doing animation? Or are you trying to build up something bigger for
Yeah.
yourself, or smaller, or reach a state of, this is my happy
Yeah.
place?
That's a great question. I think that uh, we've had we've come dangerously close to like what I would have considered a goal back in the day. And the thing is that nothing really changes. Like you you just get new problems, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're starting off, you're just trying to get to a place where your shit is together, and you're got your head above water, and your bills are getting paid, and you're doing what you love. And that's really what the goal is. I am very proud to say that I have supported my family doing what it is that I love to do, which is just make stuff on the computer.
Yeah.
That's what I love to do. And it's that's the goal.
Yeah.
Like it was great, dude, when they said 6-point harness on the Academy Award stage. I mean, yeah, it did bring a tear to my eye. It absolutely. But it didn't like really change like my life. You know what I mean? Like it was still like, I've got deadlines, I've got this, I got that. And that's never, there's no place where you are satisfied. You know what I mean? Like that, if that happens, you might as well die.
You've died.
Like,
Yeah. I mean, like, I feel like humans are conditioned not to be satisfied. Did winning, when you heard your name getting called, did that make the things a little easier for the studio? Did more work come in? Did more attention come to you guys? Like,
oh, for sure.
Should I go out and try to win an Oscar for myself so I have a little easier afterwards?
I mean, we worked a long time, and like we've had projects that were like, oh God, if we just get that, and then you don't get it, and it feels like the end of the world. And then there's this other project, that you're kind of like, oh, okay, and you work on it, and it ends up being something that everybody loves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And you're like, oh, I loved it all along, actually.
I mean, hey, like that's that's a thing. It's like it's I'll admit it, that it's easy for me to get lose patience or lose focus of the I think that's I'm just being honest. Like it's easy to kind of go like and go like, well, yeah, they didn't want to do my great idea, they want to do their stupid idea. Yeah. and that's a horrible poisonous attitude that you can have. I think that that's something I see often in animation. It's like there's a lot of old grumps, and I guess if you're going to ask me what my goal is to not be that. That's my goal, is
fight the grump,
is to not be one of those bitter dudes. Continue to keep the lights on in my home, and keep all the employees at the studio paid, and continue to just do stuff that I love and find interesting, knowing that the price to get there is doing stuff that I may not find that interesting, but keeps the whole machine going, because it's not just me, it's all of the team at the studio. And we've had some amazing people, like we have a lot of people that have worked at 6-point over 20 years, people that have gone on to win Oscars of their own, and win Emmys of their own, and win awards and stuff. And I mean, come on, like I never thought that I would come anywhere near an award of any kind. Of any kind. Like that's just not, that's just that's just luck.
Yeah.
And all of us have luck, of some kind or another, and it's just a thing, and a lot of it has to just kind of being in the right place at the right time. Totally. and being open to a challenge. I think that's what it all kind of comes down to for me.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying. It's very like, I don't know, it just feels very genuine. Like I feel like you can't be in this industry if you don't love it, but I'm wondering, from the start, like 99% of businesses fail in like the first year in like any industry. What do you think it, looking back now, like what was it that made you guys get past that first year and reach a stable point where you could rely on this to keep the lights on and all this jazz?
Well, I don't think that that's a thing, really. You know, I think that it's always like something that it doesn't go away. You know, like it doesn't. It's not like, oh, I can relax now. You know what I mean? Like I still worry about keeping the lights on. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
like I mean, not to the same level. You know what I mean. But
Well, yeah.
it's like
Like what's
there's
next year gonna bring? What's 2 years from now gonna
yeah,
bring?
yeah, exactly. And so I don't think it's a um I wouldn't look at it like that. I mean, the thing is that there have been times, you know, when the studio has struggled for sure, you know, where it's like we're counting on this big job and it didn't come through or whatever, you know, we're counting on this or that and it doesn't come through and we've got to go into scramble mode. You know, that happened, you know, like 12 years ago or something where it was kind of dicey, you know.
Yeah.
And we just stuck together and we tried to be smart. We tried to take roll with the punches and, you know, kind of land the next thing. And you know, there's kind of a funny story where we had this really big job that went away at the last minute, and we had been carrying a lot of employees to do that job, and then all of a sudden we had nothing, and we rebuilt the studio, you know, from the ground up with another job
Hmm.
that that came through. It was a you know a movie for Comedy Central that we did, a drawn together movie, and we had invited the executives and creators over, and Brendan, we called everybody. It's like, you come and sit at a computer, you know, and pretend to be working. And oh yeah, sure. And we packed the place. You know, people came in, they're like, oh yeah, this is really nice. So we then went into the conference room and had our long meeting. Walked out, everybody had left. They're like, cool, I did it. I leave, and then you know we're kind of like, oh, it's coffee time, I guess.
They're none the wiser. Oh my gosh. But like
Hey,
what
it worked.
so like what's stopping like so when you say we, who are you talking about? Like you and
Myself, Brendan, Birch, who is the CEO, Dave Vamos. These were during a kind of our pirate ship years,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
where it was just like we had no structure. We were just taking jobs. We were spending money. We were had a studio in the middle of Hollywood, and you know, it was wild. It was
Yeah.
wild. People. It was like kind of a you know, Animal House kind of atmosphere. You know, it was just like people partying all the time, people working. You know, it was like 10 years of that almost, you know, where we just, you know, we were just you know, trying to work, you know, and it was kind of a dorm, you know, feel to it. And we had to grow up, you know, and we had to get, you know, like some we not only had to get like help from grown-ups, but we had to become grown-ups ourselves,
Oh
you know.
no.
So yeah, you know, like all of that comes from, you know, it's like when you're a kid, you know, and you fall off your bike, you know, doing something stupid, you know, you learn not to do that again.
Makes sense.
And you know, when you're dealing with more and more complex things, I think that falling your face can be a great thing for you personally, you know, like that's just how it goes.
So what prevented you from, you know, you have all this skills and experience. What prevented you from going and working at a different studio when things got tough instead of saying like we're gonna like to so you mentioned 3 or 4 people, like having like
Mm-hmm.
a tight knit band of people who
Yeah,
are all in it is super valuable. But what prevented you guys from saying, you know, this is
from
kind of
splintering.
hard and I'm getting an offer over here that looks kind of attractive.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think we just really wanted it to work,
Yeah.
and you know, you know, I think that it was always the best option for me because I have worked at other places. You know, like unlike a lot of people that have kind of come through the studio. I've worked at some big networks, you know. I did, like, just as Six Point was starting, I worked at a big network. Um, and I knew that that culture wasn't for me. You know, I knew that when it comes to a really big place like that, it's just so inherently political.
Yeah.
And I went through a lot of weird political shit when I was there. And it's just not, I knew that wasn't for me. And I didn't have any, we get a lot of kids coming in from, like, sometimes straight out of school, and their dream is to work for a Nickelodeon, or uh a Cartoon Network or something like that. That's their, like, childhood dream. And I don't know, like, it wasn't really my dream to work at a place like that, but I did. And I just, like, that experience, or really early on at Six Point, was it was like it was like, now I would really, like, rather make this work with my best friends,
Yeah.
and as hard as it is, this is so much more rewarding than kind of being a cog in the machine, that, you know, um, which is kind of what happens to artists, like. And it's something that we have to fight against too sometimes. Like, we'll have, like, sometimes a producer will make a mistake and go look at artists like, that's a animator X. Animator X makes, 20 seconds of animation per week or whatever, and looks at it like a big grid, without necessarily recognizing the person, and treating the person like
Yeah.
that, like. And I've had to deal with that a couple times on projects over the years, not now. But, like, we had a very by the numbers producer that, you know we and it wasn't, they were good, they're good at what they're doing, but there's the human element
Right.
that, as small as we are, it's easier to kind of deal with. you know I don't know why someone would want to work at Nickelodeon, to be honest. I don't know. Like, part of it was, like, we didn't have, benefits in the beginning, which we do now. I get that. Like, that's a big one. But, like you, it was just, it's such a different culture. Like, where I worked, I would hear artists say things like, "Man, oh, I got so much work to do. I have to do like 3 drawings this week." And it's like, what? Like, well, I've been, like, listening to you talk to the cubicle next to me for like 3 hours about nothing. Why don't you do your 3 drawings?
Yeah. Maybe you were, because, like, I've talked to people who work at Pixar, Nickelodeon, whatever, and they absolutely love it. They're part of something bigger. They work on the things that they've
Yeah,
always dreamed of, etc. Do you
yeah.
think that when you were working there, because, like, do you had, like, I don't, maybe kind of a bias to hearing more of, like, this is cog stuff because that's how you felt, versus, like, if you were
That was my
kind of,
experience.
that was your
It was just
experience.
my that was just my experience.
Yeah.
Was kind of being a cog. And I I I'm not saying that everybody at Nickelodeon or anything is like a cog. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just, that was my experience on the show that I was on.
Totally.
And it was kind of a weird experience where you didn't necessarily feel like uh you were being dealt with straightly. What I mean? Like, it felt like everything was, like, so couched in, like, spinning the truth in a way. It was just weird. So I had
So
some issues with that.
So at Six Point, what is, like, the culture that you, because now you're more in control of your career path a bit more,
Mhm.
and you have that like, say in how things go, and you feel like,
Well, what
what is the
helps?
culture you're trying to create at Six Point?
So the culture at Six Point that we try to create is, like, we have just a zillion different jobs all the time. and
Yeah.
each job is a different thing, and some of them are client jobs, some of them are our own development jobs, but no two things are the same. No two things are ever the same. So when I look at the staff that we have, each one of these people are like an individual that has their own like passions, the things they want to do. And what my goal is to piece every person to the thing that they want. You know,
Nice.
sometimes we'll get like jobs in there. It's like we want to do some anime looking thing. Well, I got like 3 anime freaks over here. Like
Yeah.
they're gonna love this.
I
I
feel like
have
you did that with Tig Notaro. Like the styles are so
Yeah.
good. That was like one of the things I was wondering. That's awesome.
Well, it goes beyond TIG. It's like every job is like its thing, and I just want people to be really happy and fulfilled.
Yeah.
And we've had some employees that are like, hey, I just kind of want to do what I do and not think about stuff. I just want to do my job. And it's like, really? Because you'd be really good as a supervisor. I'm like, it's like you're so good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know what? You go, you do that. You know what? That's fine. And then there's other people that have all kinds of different talents. And so I think that that's the kind of culture that I want to. We've all tried to kind of imbue in the studio, which is like just really, really like feeding people's passions and learning a ton, and letting people, some people you can throw them in the deep end. Here you go, and they love it. And then some people it's like, okay, let's like deal with how you want to be dealt with. And
Nice. No, I love
it's
that.
all good. It's all good. And it's hard to keep the culture going, in while we're all on Zoom. It's like really tough, but we're trying. And we have our dailies, our weeklies, with everybody's got to stop what they're doing and check out what's going on in the studio. And our Slack channels are just bursting with, it's like, you need to get a new Slack plan. It says you've outgrown this.
That's a good
So,
thing.
yeah, it's a good thing. And, but like, I think we've done a pretty good job of keeping it to the Slack, or keeping it to the pandemic, Zoom kind of culture. But what you really lose, and for me as a director, like when I'm giving someone direction, they can be nodding and they can be saying all the right things back to me, but I don't know that
Yeah.
it's really been received to the degree of nuance that I've tried to communicate.
Mm.
And if I'm in the studio, I can just walk by their desk and see, see how it's going. But
Yeah.
on Zoom, can't really do that. And then you kind of get it when it's done or when they're ready to show it, and then you kind of like, oh no, that's not what I was talking about. And so I've had producers try to solve this by saying like, oh, we'll do a check-in, you know and I'm just like, that's just like putting in another deadline. Like it's not the way an artist thinks. Like an artist needs to be in a zone, and they need to be in that kind of creative mood, um, where there are no wrong answers. And it's like, if they've got 2 o'clock coming up, they're just gonna,
Yeah.
wrap it up. That's just the way the brain works. So, I think it's worth it to not do the check-in, but take a gamble and try to be as clear as I can and draw as much as I can to try to explain everything, um,
Totally.
and not just be so verbal all the time.
Yeah. So I take it you're gonna try to get back into the studio as soon as you can, then as soon as it's safe and whatnot.
I don't think we're in a rush,
Yeah.
to be honest. I don't think so. Like, safety has got to be, we're not chomping right now to like get back in the studio like some places are. I think we're doing fine. Like the work's getting done. The work is good. I can't complain, about the quality. It's all turning out really well. It'll be great once we can, but I think and thing is, there are a lot of people have gotten really used to working at home.
Oh yeah,
and
sure.
and well, a lot of people have, and I don't think that's ever going to 100% go away. I think it's the longer this continues, the harder it's going to be to get people back in. And it's we're lucky in that we don't have like all this money tied up in like giant spaces. Like we have a big office in Echo Park that's been empty, but we've been smart about how we're using it. And I don't think we're too worried about rushing back into the office. Yeah.
Fair. Well, Greg, we've talked about your whole life and career,
Yes.
starting from
Sorry,
Greg to wrestling to
I think we
a
went
studio.
well over time.
What you're working on? Is there anything coming up that you wanted to share, or anything else that you think would be interesting for people listening to know about? Nothing. Goodbye. Over.
Oh man. No, I mean, we have a lot of stuff, great stuff that's coming up. I don't think there's anything that I can talk about right now. It's just not at that stage. So
fair. Cool. Well, any last words of wisdom, things you wish you knew that have really drastically helped you in your career, or anything like that?
Oh my God.
Oh no, this is starting another new podcast.
Yes. Start a new podcast. Nothing succinct. I don't know. Okay. I think I've probably said it. I think I've probably said it in another way somewhere else.
You dropped lots
hour and a half.
Yeah. well then let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming on the chat.
Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure.
Fun.
Yeah.
It's a total blast.
And if you're listening and you want to get in touch with Greg or find out about his projects or whatnot, you can follow him on Twitter at Greg_Franklin. Of course, you can check out Tig Notaro on HBO Max, and check out 6pointharness.com to see all the projects they're working on. And that's all for now. Thank you so much for listening. Okay, bye. The music for this podcast was composed by Will Farmer and the graphics by Daniel Abensauer. I encourage you to look them up if you enjoyed their work.